Welcome back for episode number 3. I just wanted to give you a bit of context to where we jump off. It's a discussion about boxing and how you need to utilize instinct, but also have some level of awareness that goes into that. And here we are.
You got to think less. Like it has to be more based off instinct. As soon as I start to overthink, is that the right stance? Is my hands in the right place? Are my feet in the right place? Everything goes to shit. And obviously there's a point where you have to think about what kind of move you're doing or whatever, but then it has to flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the beginning, you need to be conscious about what you're doing and get the fundamentals down. So in learning, there's 4 stages. There's unconscious incompetence. So you don't know what you don't know. Conscious incompetence, you've now learned that there's something you're not good at.
And then comes conscious competence. So you have to focus on what you're trying to do, but you can do it.
And then it goes through finally to unconscious competence.
Yeah.
And then, so that's where you've transitioned to the point where you're not even thinking about doing it and you're just good at it.
It's just automatic.
Yeah. And I think that you could probably see a correlation between the neural pathways you have for what you're doing. If you get in a car and you've never driven, it's going to be something that's completely out of your skill set. And then you're going to be focused on, okay, I've got to fucking check the road. I've got to control the vehicle. And you're going to be breaking that down like accelerator, steering. And there's all of these variables that you're trying to put together. But then once you've got enough repetitions and like enough, skill in that, then you're going to be able to be at the point where you are like 15 years later, where you can drive pretty much not even paying attention.
Yeah, it's just like second nature. And the double-edged sword, I guess, like, is when you're learning something and you're hyper-focused on learning that new, whatever it may be, boxing, riding the motorbike, car, whatever it is, not only are you hyper-focused on what it is you have to learn, but you're anxious because you're aware you're not competent at it.
Yeah.
So it's like double dangerous. Like learning a new technique in boxing or karate or something, you're aware that anything that you do new, you're going to have more anxiety towards. So like, I suppose lowering that anxiety is important, but that just comes, I think, through repetition.
Totally.
Practice.
And you say with the car, motorbike example, that anxiety is going to be fueled by the consequence of not doing it right, having a crash. And it probably takes away some of your ability to actually learn the thing if you're focused on what could go wrong.
Yeah, and if your anxiety levels are too high, if you tense up on a motorbike or in martial arts, whatever it is, even tensing up in any form of sports, like it takes away the actual like ability you have.
Yeah, your flow as well.
Yeah, it takes away your flow, your ability, uses up more energy. And then, it makes it more difficult for you to learn. Like it's almost like a few times like before boxing, I've had these really big meditations prior to a boxing session and had such a better flow. So like getting your base level anxiety down to a lower point. I think in general, in everything, you can function better, whether it's studying or whatever. If you're at a higher stress level and you're going into something, you're never going to be as effective. Yeah.
100%. And to back your point, when I was in Southeast Asia, I'd been meditating a lot and I was staying at a hostel and I was volunteering. So like my role was being a social volunteer and they had beer pong nights. Now I'd played beer pong once in my life, but because I'd been meditating so much, I could focus. And there's probably a bit of skill transfer when you fuck around and throw a bit of paper in the bin and shit at home.
Yeah.
Like I'd been practicing that for a while. So there was a bit of crossover, but
a little home basketball. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was so like centered in my state and meditating. First time that I was actually getting the job, I went and met this guy and he's like, all right, bro, like my team are in the final. You step in, show me how you go. So, no pressure, no worries.
In the
like,
final. To start with.
Yeah. Took the shot and fucking got it in and won the game. And then he's like, all right, you got the job. I was like, fuck yeah. And when I was playing beer pong since then, I was like super dialed in my shots. And then I reckon I've played lately where I haven't been meditating, not as centered. And no bueno, not as good.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that with him, April. Like I've noticed with that, like back in the day, I mean, I'm sober now, but previously when I used to play, and you hear this from other people as well, there's like a certain amount of drinks where you play your best.
Mm.
Like I remember my brother and there's other mates that they'll be like, if I'm 3 drinks in, you're all going down. And it's because you at that level where you've lowered your inhibitions. You're not sloppy yet,
Yeah.
and you're not at that point. But I mean, you can do the same sober, provided you're calm enough. And that's like with 8 ball, I find it really like it shows you that real distinction. Like if you're really stressed out, I play a horrible 8 ball game. I can play an amazing 8 ball game.
Yeah.
But it's dependent on my levels of meditation and I suppose anything that takes hyper focus or any new thing that you're learning, if you're already at a heightened level, it's going to be a lot harder to take it in. And not only that, a little like bounce back that you can have is that because you're so anxious, then you do suggested thing, like whatever it may be, new sport, motorbike riding, whatever. Then that experience becomes almost like a core memory that you did horrible. That's what I find. And I find that, so if you can, if there's people that are heightened or have a really high anxiety level, like there's in this book that I read on the 7 Habits Highly Effective People, it says get on private victories first, as opposed to jumping into like, let's say, I don't know, Jeremy's gym type place with a lot of people that are huge and been in bodybuilding competitions. Like start off, if you've never lifted any weights, start off at home. You know what I mean? And then you build from that. And then you might go to another gym. Then you might end up at Jeremy's with all people that have done bodybuilding competition. But if you jump those steps, it's going to be a very overwhelming experience, which I think is not going to be a positive kind of memory towards that experience.
Yeah, totally. Plus, jumping in that end might not feel like, the most welcoming environment. Could be, but I see your point.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. I think taking small steps in any like term of recovery, mental health, if you're trying to recover from anxiety, depression, if you're trying to recover from drugs, whatever, taking smaller steps and still moving forward is going to be actually more powerful than taking a huge step, because that has the potential to go down, say 5 steps. You know, you like pull back from that, which was a positive idea, but you've just jumped in the deep end.
Yeah, totally. I think we all can do that because in this day of information abundance, most people know what is optimal to do. Oh, if I want to get in shape, I need to eat like X and I need to train 5 times a week and I need to do all of these things like optimally. And that's probably true in terms of what might get the best results, but it's likely not what is going to be sustainable. It's not what you can do. So I think, like he said, start with the small steps and be realistic of where you've been at. If you've been not training for a year, don't try and jump into 5 times a week.
No, even if you're starting off with a walk around the block, maybe a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually going to be more sustainable. And essentially, like, you're going to build up anyway, naturally.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
Like, if you have that mindset and you're setting goals and you're setting achievements, you're going to build up. But going too fast can definitely be detrimental. Definitely something I've done. I remember I always keep going back to boxing coaches, but another boxing coach I was following on Instagram. And he said, I see all these people and they like fast or like eat very minimal Monday to Friday. And then they blow out on a Saturday. And he's like, why not just have one meal on a Wednesday? One like semi-cheap meal. You might get some takeaway. You might still want to keep it relatively healthy, but you might have some rice instead of just no carbs or whatever. So that's such a great point. Like, why put your body through all this stress for 5 days and really push it, that you're craving sugar, you're craving. Why not just go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you have a little relax in the middle of the day or night time, then go Thursday, Friday. That's how they have a relax. And it's like, that's going to be sustainable. That's not going to be stress on your body.
Yeah.
You know?
And on your mind, because there's definitely a rebound effect that I've experienced myself when I've been too restrictive with what I'm eating. If you create this diet where you're like, okay, this is what I have to eat, but it feels like it's taking away everything that you want and there's no pleasure. And then you get to a point where, especially if there's things outside of it where you're like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to have this. And then you just let go of the whole thing because it was too much pressure. And then you just let yourself go. And then whatever it was that got you to eat that way in the first place tends to get out of control. And then you're like, okay, now we've gone too far. Either I feel like shit or I don't like how I look. Now I'm going to knee jerk back up, and you go into that yo diet kind of phase. But then the times where I've instead substituted what I had been eating. So if I'd been having like I don't know, like it's been a while now, say like sugar, some sort of snack. And instead, like I've actually just worked out a healthy alternative that still tastes good, might not be perfectly healthy, but it's actually way better than what I was having. That's then allowed me to still have something I enjoy and then do it ongoingly.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean with that. And yeah, it's just a smarter way. And it took me a long time to learn that. Still to this day, push myself too much. And then I have to be like, is this realistic? Like you're putting yourself through all this mental stress when you could just back it off a little and let's just set the goalposts back a little bit further. Maybe that 1 month to be in a bodybuilding competition wasn't realistic. You know what I mean? For 6 months or whatever. Like even with me without the carbs, like what I'll do is on a Saturday night, every Saturday night, I'll get still a no carb meal, but I'll get like Indian or Chinese, like a big, but whatever it is, sweet and sour pork or Mongolian lamb or whatever. It's veggies and meat. It might not be that healthy. There's a bit of MSG, there's a bit of, but like at the end of the day, it's giving me something to look forward to and something to kind of, you're going to have a bit of enjoyment, man. I don't think we're built to be robots and not have a little bit of fun and go out, step outside the square every now and then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that all comes down to perception and your own, like your perspective that what you're having is going to give you a sense of enjoyment. Because I feel like I've reached that point now with healthy food where I don't really crave unhealthy food, but like I can get that sense of pleasure from eating like really healthy food. But the process to getting there took a while. Like it wasn't like, and now I'm eating that way. Cause I think you literally have to train your gut microbiome to be able to absorb and digest the healthy food. Cause I had a friend back in the day and they went from like high processed, high sugar, like smoking bongs straight into eating raw veggies, salads, and like all the healthy stuff. But they had constant bloating, like it wasn't digesting well. And what happens when you eat a high sugar diet is you've got various strains of bacteria in your gut microbiome. And if you have like starches, quick digesting things like sugar, they are going to be feeding one type of bacterial strain and the others are going to go down. And so then if you go straight from that to eating like raw veggies, high fiber, you don't have the gut bacteria to break that down.
Yeah. So there's that massive adjustment period.
Yeah.
And I suppose as well, your body is going to be craving the sugar as well, which is going to cause possible, like even slight, you're probably not going to notice what it's from, but like mood swings.
Yeah.
And like even me, I cut out sugar, like from coffees, like no more teaspoons of sugar. Like I'm still having coffee, but I'll cut the sugars out mainly, and I try to cut out any sugary foods. It's basically, it's pretty blandish diet for me, but it works. And even that had a big bounce back effect. Just cutting out the sugar from the coffees, it was like, wow, man, initially I felt like a little depleted and I felt like a little grumpy in that. I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't feel like I'm getting what I need. My body's craving something and I'm not getting that hit. So like I was substituting it with like berries. Like I was having a lot of raspberries and that when I was having that sugar craving. Like I'd substitute it with some form of fruit. So I'm getting that sugary, sweet kind of taste, but it's a healthy form. But yeah, when your body's not used to it, it's like in the same kind of manner that, pardon me, you have to train your brain. You have to train your body.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and
the sugar side of things can have multiple, I guess, aspects working against you there. Like one, you've got the actual bacteria that are dying off that are causing the cravings. But then you've also got your mental, psychological sense that, like I wanted something that would just give me a hit of pleasure and now I'm not getting that. And then probably also like some level of dopamine that comes from that and not getting that, which add all that together and it's a pretty addictive cycle.
It is, man. Yeah. And yeah, I found myself going to other addictions in comparison to you. I'm in like quite early stages of sobriety, like 73 days. But what I've found now, I seem to be getting over that kind of hill. Like now I feel like I'm on the downhill part.
Yeah.
But the last month or two, I found that my addiction's just directed to another addiction. So like it's some form of dopamine hit, whether it was like my phone or even dating apps and women, I was like, oh, that'll be something that I have
100%.
I need some kind of fulfillment, or I need some form of fun, because it's particularly in the early stages of sobriety for me, it's very isolating. And that's how I prefer it, because I think the risk outweighs the fun of me going out.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
if I'm hanging out with someone like you, different stories. I know that you understand you're not going to be the type of person that's going to push me to drink, or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I can cater it to, let's meet at a cafe, or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in terms of going out like with friends and all that, which I want to start embarking on now, because I think there's a huge growth point there. And I think you can have so much fun still living. You still got to, like when I did 7 months sober, I was still going to clubs. I was still having such a fun time and loving the atmosphere, loving the music. I was just sober. But I do think there's a period of time, rough gauge, like 3 months is 100 days, roughly, where it's important to be strategic about those outings.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to hit that stability. And I think abstinence for a period is key, just to create a bit of a circuit breaker to your kind of patterns that you have in your life. Take yourself out of that environment. So now you've got the ability to look at the contrast of, okay, when I was within those patterns of addiction, this is how life looked. And now I've stepped away from it. I've been able to look at that from the outside, understand like what was going on. Because when you get outside of an experience, you can really look at it from hindsight and get the best clarity on it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then from there, once you've also got your body out of the physical ups and downs of wanting those, like that chaos of feeling high and then low, because your body does get addicted to that, even outside of like the drug and like the physical part of it. Like those patterns that are created happens in many things. Like it's obvious in drugs, but let's say like in a relationship dynamic, when there's like high turbulence in the relationship, and then like you're not around a partner or you're around the partner and everything's like normal, that pattern in your body is going to come up, and that can create a fight between the two of you, because you want to fulfill that kind of thing, that pattern that's been happening, that rhythm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's documented proof. Like it's so much, like people that are come from, whether it's like traumatic homes or whatever, or they're in like even just traumatic relationships, like that they tend to go back to those type of people, statistically speaking. And it's logically, how does that work? But that's what it is, I believe. It's that addiction to that. And then it can feel boring if you're with someone who's actually like placid, and you're not having arguments over basic stuff. You're actually communicating properly. It can feel like you're used to all this turbulence, and your body's almost addicted to like anxiety around the relationship.
That's the same for addictive, like living the drug life. If you're out every weekend, partying, staying up for ages, whatever, and being around people that are partying all the time, and then you go back to working, there's stability, but there's not those like crazy chaos, like adrenaline. I think for some people, that's also hard for them to go back to. But that kind of goes into the pleasure pain cycle where, you know, you have those times of partying, which give you a certain amount of pleasure, but the more you do it, the more the pain aspect starts to increase, where, you know, your financials, your relationship, your family life,
Weight,
you know,
your health.
exactly, all start to detriment. And usually when those parts of your life start to become more painful than the pleasure you're getting from the nights out, then it becomes a point of, okay, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, and that's why I think they talk about so much. You have to, a lot of people have to hit rock bottom in order to change. Or there's a certain amount of suffering necessary for you to, like, not necessary, but for a lot of people, it takes a certain amount of pain and suffering for you to actually make the change and break that cycle. Because that cycle is such a difficult cycle to break when you've been living it for so long. And it's not just breaking that cycle, it's then looking at all the reasons you got into that cycle, all the underlying reasons, which is a difficult process. You know, it's a difficult process, especially without support. So I can understand these. I'm not saying that I'm a massive advocate for certain sober groups, but I can understand needing some form of accountability and support, so that I think everyone in any facet, no matter what it is, benefits from having people around them that have been in similar situations and similar lifestyles, and can understand on that lived experience level.
Yeah. I like to conceptualize that as we're all on a journey in life, and on that path, there's going to be people that are ahead of you and behind you. And if the people that are ahead of you can give you support on going, hey, this is like the way that I got to here. And then you can help the people behind you and going, hey, like this is the way forward for me. And then we're all helping each other get ahead and come up to where we are. And it's going to be a much more collaborative journey where instead of each person individually trying to find their way, you can build on that knowledge and wisdom that others have lived through.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, is giving back to, obviously you got to prioritize your own mental health. When you're in a good place and you've healed, then you can help other people get to where you've got to, whether it's someone young just heading down the wrong path and hanging out with the wrong people and doing the wrong things. And yeah, it's good when you can guide people that, but knowing, I suppose that can venture into knowing your limits in terms of giving to people. And if you're being like a people pleasing, that, like if that person, let's say, doesn't really want to change, you have to know when to pull back. You know, forcing anything doesn't, whether it's a relationship, like an intimate relationship, whether it's trying to help somebody to quit smoking or cut back on food, they have to be at a point where they want to change and they've realized there's a problem and, hey, I'm going to put in the effort to make some change.
The key part, isn't it? Because when you invest energy into someone, and I've really had to look at my own motivations for wanting to help people, because sometimes you can do it for your own sense of validation where you're like, I'm feeling good through helping this person. So it was actually about helping them or making yourself feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that is a better thing than not helping someone. But it can also lead to you then helping people beyond what the energy is that you'd want to give to it.
And then your cup's getting emptier.
Exactly.
And then you're depleted. I've spent many years trying to help people that didn't want the help, or they weren't
ready to change.
They weren't ready to change. It's not necessarily that they didn't want to change. They obviously weren't happy with their lifestyle. But you're right. They weren't ready to change. And they were so strongly opinionated. They didn't have any, like in NA, they have this thing, to change you need, how is honesty, openness, and willingness. Didn't have the openness. It's like to the person I was trying to help. Right? And always coming back with these disputes and arguments like, no, I'm not going to try that. That doesn't work. Well, you haven't even tried it. So how can you have an opinion on something you've never experienced? So it's something that I learned way too late, and I'm still struggling with, is knowing when to step back, like with people, and not overcommit. And you know what? Like I don't seek out to help people, to be honest. Like I do in terms of this podcast, and I do want to help people in my profession. But like, I'm not going to go out of my way to help someone unless it's apparent to me that they want to change and they're willing to change and they have an open mind. Then cool, I'm going to do it. But if I give you that advice and it's like throwing back in my face, or you don't agree or whatever, like I need to know when to step away and not allow that. And I think everyone's on a different journey, but I've taken way too long, in my own opinion, to realize when to step away, and also to have enough self-value of myself, like in particular in intimate relationships, to be like, you know what? I think due to me feeling as if I needed somebody, I needed some connection, and being in a lot of pain, I would allow certain things that I shouldn't have allowed. And that's not the person I am anymore. Like if someone's disrespecting me and all that, I don't have to see that 1,000 times to walk away. Which was my previous pattern.
But there's probably numerous things factoring into why you stay in that, right? There's like the desire to not be alone. There's so many things that go beyond the surface level there.
I think it also like a lack of understanding and like a lack of knowledge of how detrimental it was to me. It's like when you get out of it, like when you're in a room,
it's very true.
I always say this, when you got the incense on, after a little while, you can't smell it. But someone else that walks into the room from the outside point of view, that's really strong incense, that smell. But it's once you get out of it, then you look back and you have the clarity. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I put up with that, or I can't believe I allowed that. But when you're in it, you're in this cycle.
I think a lot of people would resonate with that certain things become normalized. And in my own experience, I find there's usually a tipping point where it comes to your awareness, where there's some point in the early stages where you're going into a dynamic, and this can be like with drugs, it can be with a relationship, and you get into it and then it comes to your awareness, this isn't serving me. But then there's also these other things that are keeping you in it, where you're like, but there's this benefit, and your mind can rationalize it. And what I find is if you stay beyond that initial awareness realization point, you tend to normalize it, and that kind of impetus to leave it dies down. And then you can be caught in it for 3 times longer than you'd already been in it. And then what tends to happen in that time is either at the very least your energy is drained and potentially like other things are detrimented. And then you eventually, let's say you were in a relationship for 2 months, you realize, oh, this isn't serving me. There's this benefit and I'm going to stay. And then 6 months later, you're depleted and you're like, oh, I'm out. And then you look back, you're like, fuck up. I was aware of that, but I just fucking hung in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many people do that. So many people do that. They like, for whatever reason or rationalization, some of what I was saying with the other relationship, like you stay in it and rationalize it because you think that those things benefit and outweigh it. But I've gotten to a point now that I won't settle for anything anymore. If there's something off, if it's not like 100% yes, it's a no. If I'm not 100% into going on a social event or 100% into this person or 100%, then that's when I need to walk away and reassess. And obviously there's a little bit of leeway with that. It's not completely black and white. There's a gray area, but yeah, I've learned through experience that if you allow these little red flags and you don't address them, or at least have the conversation about them and see if there is a way around it.
Yeah.
Then they're going to come back up, man. In one way or another, they're going to resurface.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tricky thing to look back at and be like, oh, fuck, the red flags were there.
Yeah.
But in my experience, when you overlook the red flags, it's because there's something about I don't want to say illusion, but let's say when you meet someone and there's a certain version of them that you're seeing, and then it's later on where you're like, like who I was perceiving them to be wasn't matching up to who the reality of them was.
Mm-hmm.
Usually in the beginning, there's red flags that are indicating who they really were. If you are romanticizing the perception of them, you don't really want to look at reality. And I think that's what it comes down to with the red flags. Like for me, at least, it's been, have I wanted to be honest with myself and accept what appears to be reality, or have I fallen in love with the idea of what the illusion could be? And this extends to like people that get scammed. Oh, you've got $1 million waiting. You just need to give me 1,000. And most people would want to be like, okay, yeah, that's not real. But if someone really wants that $1,000, they're not going to look at the reality. They're going to be like, I've got $1,000, but this guy doesn't exist. And they don't want to look at the red flags.
Yeah, definitely. And if I suppose the benefit's more appealing, let's say, for instance, you hadn't been in a relationship for 3 or 4 years or 5 years. Now you're with a girl. It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot more likely for you to overlook some of those small things that you deem as small things. But I've found, in relationships, however it starts, like if you have, there's always all about those red flags. Like there's these little doubts, and you might not even express them because you want to bury them and be like, nah, like I'm having fun going out to dinner. We're doing this, we're doing that. So far, it's been great. Like those little doubts, so they're always there. And I suppose that's where it comes down to getting yourself into the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Prior to being with someone, not in the mix of healing. And I'm not saying you can't. I think you have to test the waters, and the only way to figure this stuff out is to go through.
Yeah.
Like you have to go through it. But if you're really not in a good place mentally, or you're struggling, it's not the time to go out with somebody, because just having some company and that sort of stuff is going to be so much more appealing when you're in a lot of pain.
Yeah. Exactly.
That could potentially be some really big issues that you're overlooking.
Yeah. And you know what I've found? When you're in that state, that lowered state, who you're going to attract is going to be at a similar level to you. Now, that can be okay if are a certain level of conscious and awareness where you can help each other kind of heal, but there's also potential for detriment there.
Yeah, a lot more potential.
Yeah,
when you're in a good place, and your perception as well can be skewed. You know what I mean? Like your perception of what you want when you're not healed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like for instance, the way I would look at alcohol and drugs, you take me back 7-8 months. my entire perception in my brain was wired to think that it's fun, and anyone that's sober is not having fun, and they're actually quite a boring person. Now that I've healed, meditated, worked on myself a lot, therapy, all that sort of stuff, reading books, and been working on myself, now I can't think of anything worse than doing that. And I'm like, this is my full potential. I want to live at my full potential the entire time.
You know what the funny thing is? From the other side of the fence, you look back at people drinking and doing drugs on the weekend, and you're like, oh, that's boring.
Yeah, yeah, you are. And you're like, not only that, I'm like, not only is that boring, on Sunday morning, I'm going to be able to work out. You're not going to be able to work out. Like, you've just spent, also the fine, I'm like, you've just spent $400.
Yeah, yeah.
On what? On having a hang?
Yeah. How good is waking up fresh on a Sunday morning?
Oh.
It's like you've created another day of the week for yourself, hey?
100%, man. You've got, let's say you're somebody who drinks 2 times a week, just 2 times a week. You've lost like 30% of your week. You know what I mean? You add in the hangovers, 2 days of hangovers, and then the nights.
Yeah.
Nearly 3 days is gone of a 7-day week.
And like, you don't realize until you have the contrast, but once you take it out, you realize how much better you can feel without it.
And the productivity is through the roof.
Yeah.
Like, what you can accomplish in 3 months, things that you might have dreamed of for 5-6 years and put on the back burner. And it's like in 2-3 months, you're creating things that you'd wanted to do. So yeah, for me, man, like I guess I'm lucky in this sense that I don't have the compulsion to drink or it's not something I fight. Like, it's the last thing I want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I look at it and I'm like,
yeah,
that looks disgusting to me. Poison. That's poison, especially as you get older as well. I think that fact is when you're 18, 19, drink gonna kill you that much or affect
you bounce
your
back quicker. Everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
It's a new experience where you're still like enjoying the novelty of it.
100%. Yeah. And I suppose the benefits maybe even outweigh because the socializing, that getting out of your comfort zone, the concert you go to, all that sort of stuff it's awesome. But that's actually the next step for me, I feel, in terms of having fun and that. I want to start doing things like, I don't know, go on the circus, going skydiving, going to bounce with friends, or like just doing activities like going on a trail, going camping, those sort of things sober. Yeah. That's what I want to start to explore. I feel like I'm at a point now where I'm stable and that's not something that I want to do. And you can have as much fun, if not more, I think. So I think more, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Sober. Yeah.
Especially when you have a group of friends, like chicks, guys, whatever, like, and can actually have good conversation, laughs. That can be a much more enriching experience. Go surfing, camping, whatever it is.
Absolutely, man.
And that's something, what you just said there, brought up something I hadn't thought about for a while, but from back in the weed smoking days, all the things you listed there, how much would you be like, oh yeah, you got to get stoned to go do that? Like, the thought of kicking the footy or something without smoking was like, well, that seems weird. Like, how would you do that?
It's going to be so boring.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm going to go for a drive to the shop. Wait, I'm going to have a bong peppers.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be a fun drive. Yeah, everything, man. Like, you go on the cinemas. Like, I would never go to the drive-in or the cinemas without smoking, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to watch a movie sober.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's not fun.
I will admit, when I saw Tropic Thunder and had 4 cones before going in.
That's a great movie to have cones before.
I was like so stoned that I didn't, through the whole thing, I didn't even realize Robert Downey Jr. was the black guy. Like, someone was like, yeah, that was it. I was like, was it? Like, fuck. The thing is, I guess with weed, I can really feel like that was then and that was a good phase. And now I've grown out of that phase and I'm not still trying to live that version of myself. I think that's something that's really helped me, where I'm like, cool, that was a good phase to go through. I enjoyed it. But now, like, I'm moving into a different version of myself. That's not a part of my life because my values have changed. And also, what do I want to achieve in life, and who I want to be and how I want to present doesn't fit with that being a behavior for me anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not to say that, like, for me, I don't have any regrets, man. Like, even through a very rocky road, let's just say, but I still don't have any regrets, man. I had so much fun, whether it was ecstasy, weed, alcohol. I had some of the best times. I had some horrible times as well, but I don't even regret them because everything taught me and got me to the point I'm at now.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a more fuller version of yourself. Once you've been through those kind of trials and tribulations of addiction or pain, you become I don't know, like, I think you're actually like a happier version because you've been through all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to say on that actually. Like one, it's good to do it early and then not have the midlife crisis later on.
Mhm.
Secondly, your depth of character, I think, is increased where if you look at, don't get me wrong, there's people that are exceptions to the rule where they're cool without having done any substances, but it does seem like it just gives you a bit more like humbleness.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit more character as well, I find.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
the people I guess I love the most, even in terms of like movies and heroes and that sort of stuff. People that kind of they fucked it all up at some
Yeah.
point and then they come back from it and they live that. They just it's just life experience. Like going through that life experience of that difficulty and that party life and all that. I love that I had those experiences. I love that I was that person.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
I'll never regret that. Although it got to a point where obviously it wasn't serving me.
Yeah.
And like you said, now it just doesn't align with me. I want to reach my full potential. I'm at an older age. My values have changed, my health, my well-being. That's my priority.
What was really interesting for me, I've thought about in reflection. When I was younger, I was like super shy and introverted.
Mm.
And then it was probably, but I also had a certain intensity that like I would go hard into things and be like pretty crazy. But that was more like when I was like, I don't know, like 13 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did find was smoking weed. I don't know if it was the actual effect or just the choice to do that, which was like on the outer fringe of things, but made me feel a bit better in myself, more the ability to be extroverted. Like it gave me confidence in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I can, yeah.
And then
relate
it took
to
it
that.
away.
Yeah, it's a full cycle.
Yeah, like I actually got to a point like I was smoking so much weed and hanging out in people's rooms where you're not communicating a lot that I remember when I was about 15, 16, a guy I went to school with was like ripping on me and I was like, he's like, yeah, you can't even talk. I was like, and like literally stuttering,
Mm.
like unable to express myself. And I was like, okay, I gotta, and from that point I quit weed for like, I had a 6-month break or something.
Yeah, I've definitely been at that point myself, man. And particularly like literally the stuttering and not being lost for words and being so like dumbfounded that it's actually, you get to a point where you're like, this isn't right, man. I'm definitely smoking too much. There's
Or not
other
enough.
meds,
No.
maybe the wrong strand, but I've been at that point and those silent where you're smoking like a session of car where you're just sitting in a room and it's like awkwardly silent.
Mm,
You're all just so stoned and it definitely changed massively. And like, I often contemplate what that change was, like, because it started out for me as, like you said, such a confidence booster. It was this I don't give a fuck attitude, and all the people I idolized and the rappers and
yeah.
all the cool people that I loved had that rebellious attitude. Oh, fuck you, man. I can't smoke weed. Watch me. I was
Yeah.
smoking outs this week. And there was something that gave me confidence there. I was like, you know what? I'm not a sheep, man. I'll do what I want when I want. No one
Yeah.
tells me what to do. But the thing was, when I was first smoking weed and when I did notice transition, I was still engaged in school in a lot of social activities.
Yeah.
Then when I left school, it started to change the dynamic because now I'm at home. Everyone's at school throughout the day. So now I'm smoking at home on my own.
Yeah.
Now socializing is becoming a bit difficult for me because I'm just not used to it. I'm used to sitting at home smoking weed
Yeah.
so much that I'm getting in my own head.
Yeah.
I'm getting paranoid, even though I'd get a little bit paranoid here and there with mates, but everyone was at the
Yeah.
end of the night in the car, like a little bit because you smoke that much. So I think it's an interesting debate because it makes me wonder if you could maintain the socializing aspect and all that. I still actually, it's just something that I'm contemplating, but I still actually think at some point the weed would have taken over. Even if I maintained the socializing, I wouldn't have been able to sustain
Yeah.
smoking.
'Cause
But
almost
I
like-
think that factored in.
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
Because I think when you first start smoking weed, you're full of life and energy, and then you're doing something that's a bit like adrenaline provoking, and then you're like the cool kids. You're separated and you're owning it. And I think there's a lot to be said for your self-image. If you have the image of someone that's never done drugs, and then you do drugs, you're now conflicting with your image, but because you're not a drug user, you're like, oh, cool. Like I'm edgy now. Like imagine if someone was to embrace that. It's like from, I don't know, like a upper class family and they're like, oh, I'm doing this now. Like it's dangerous. But then if you do that enough, say 2 years, and now you're self-image is that of a drug user,
Mm-hmm.
now that can start to weigh on you and take away from the energizing effect where you're like, oh, fuck, now look at me now,
Mm-hmm.
which
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I think that can factor into it. But also, as a substance displaces the things that were giving you energy, if you were going to school, socializing, playing sport, all of these things that enrich your life and give you energy.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to move them out of the equation and weeds replacing those activities, then you're going to have less life within you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say. And I think you articulate way better. That's what happened. We replaced the activity instead of continuing playing basketball or footy like I was. I would stop that. I remember boxing when I started at 15. I remember at 16, nearly 17, I was smoking too much weed that it was just too hard to maintain this.
Yeah.
And then going out on the weekends, obviously, and partying. And I was like, I can't maintain this. So now I'd lost something that was giving me confidence, something that was keeping me fit. And the same with everything. I ended up losing everything for weed or alcohol or both and various other drugs. I never got heavily into other drugs. I did for periods of time, what most people would call heavily, but I don't mean like addictively daily, anything like that.
Yeah.
More like party, recreational, exercise, DMA, whatever it was. But yeah, that's what it is, man. You articulated that just perfectly. That replaces those other things that are giving you these positive energies. And that's what I suppose there's this quote thing that I've seen, and addiction is something along the lines of you giving up one thing to gain everything back. Whatever that substance is, you give up one thing to gain everything back, or I can't remember the exact line, so I'm not.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point though.
But that's, you're giving, like, and that I feel like I'm finding now. And look, I'm starting to do things that I'm passionate about again, man. Like I'm back into my boxing, looking at getting a drum kit, motorcycle, like all these things that I just lost any passion for anything, man, throughout addiction.
Yeah.
I just become such a boring life.
And I guess with like, when you have an addiction that's taking up so much of your focus, all of that energy that could be going into these different things actually just gets channeled into that one thing, and it does consume you. And then, it can really keep you like stuck at this lowered level of being where you can't really do the things that you want. And the problem is, as time goes on, all of those areas of life, health, finances, relationships, etc., don't really get better when you've got something taking up all of your focus.
They don't, man. They don't. And it's almost as if you're not even in the present. You know what I mean? When you're in that state, like I wasn't present, like even like now just having conversations with my mum or something, like I'm in the present, man. I'm listening. I'm making her dinner or making her coffee.
Instead of being like, catch you later.
Yeah,
and
it's like in the back of my head thinking, can this conversation hurry the fuck up? I've got shit to do.
Get back to my addiction.
The pub's down the road. This is boring the shit out of me. Like, and yeah, just that alone is massive.
And it's interesting when you get that like contrast to be like, you almost feel bad like for how you were acting, even though you didn't realize at the time. You're like, fuck, I wasn't showing up as who I wanted to be.
Yeah, 100%. And even I can relate it to friends. I would have been so unreliable. 3-4 months ago, you asked me to do something. I wouldn't have rocked up, man. Like, very unlikely. I'm almost a guarantee. It's 98,
You're reliably
99%.
unreliable.
Reliably unreliable, man. Like, I would have cancelled on you probably last minute as well and panicked until then. And then be like, nah, fuck this, man, drugs. You know what I mean? So it's crazy sometimes. You can get caught up in life being difficult and all that. But if I look back on how engulfed I was in that addiction and that, man, I've come, like, life's so much better on the other side.
Having that fresh thinking and like the ability to think clearly and speak effortlessly, that is fucking such a gift, eh?
It is, man.
Lifting that veil of fog.
It's such a gift, man. It's such a gift, especially when you've been in it for so long. You've been lost for so long, 20 years, whatever it was, a long time. Yeah, to have that back, man, it's priceless. And yeah, I guess that's what, like, I feel for some people that they come out of addiction, but they don't. I've seen some people, they might be 10 years out of addiction and they're not having fun. Like they're almost obsessed with the addiction and they're just going to meetings or doing it. You need to start. Life's here to be enjoyed and lived. Totally. And the reason to take away that is to replace it with something, with the things that you truly love and you're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. Yeah. Having that aliveness within yourself where there's passionate and like passion and enrichment for life, that's where you want to be for sure. Because I think ultimately, if you're just not doing drugs, they still have power over you. But if you're literally shifted your focus onto living life, then you're pretty much not going to want to do drugs.
Yeah, because it takes away from the things you're passionate about, and your passion overrides anything that could give you. You're like, I'm having way too much of a good time now, socializing, working on my craft, my career. I love what I do now. I love seeing the results in the gym. I love this. I'm not going to go back to that.
No.
But to sit around and just go to a 9 to 5 job and not work on any of my passions, like, that doesn't appeal to me.
No, it's all about fulfillment. Hey,
It is, man. It's definitely.
I think there was something we were going to talk about was the David Goggins side of things, because you've started listening to his audiobook.
Yeah, man, absolutely loving it so far. I was not heaps far in, but I'm just roughly about his childhood and all that sort of stuff. How far in are you now?
Probably just over a third of the way in. So it's got up to the point where he's running ultra marathons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how you find that so far?
So I've actually listened to it previously, probably about a year ago, or maybe more. And yeah, it's fucking definitely a good insight to, how the mind can be pushed and the body can be overridden. Because without spoiling too much of it for you, basically did like SEAL training on like fractured legs. And to have that mental fortitude to dig into that pain and overcome it. Because in complete honesty, when I used to hear David Goggins without even really listening to what he said, but just getting a vibe of how much he pushes himself, I was like, that's not healthy. Like I was like, and definitely made like a snap judgment at it, where when I listened to the book, I was like, okay, I had that wrong. Like I didn't actually understand where he was coming from. I was just looking at the surface level and judging it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel the same way, man. I would listen to him and think, that guy almost has a problem. But like, that's not healthy in any way. He is too extreme. Listening to this book, I'm only, as I said, like maybe 2 hours in or something like that. Just to the part where he's starting to look in the mirror and change his life and go, I'm not going to be this guy anymore. I'm about to start training.
Yeah.
But yeah, the insight from the book and what happened to him through his shoulder and all that has completely changed my perspective on him, like in a positive way. And yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to get to the point you are and to get to the end of the book, because I think, like not only what he does is not only does he show you that the mind can overcome the body, but you actually switch your thinking to anything that's really difficult and hard is a positive. It's not a negative. You know what I mean? Throw more pain at me. You know what I mean? If I train and I've got sore legs, I'm not wicked. But this is either going to force me to do more recovery, or this is going to prove to me that I can push through at this level, which means imagine what I can do when I'm healed.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think there is a balance point, because it's so tricky, because David Goggins has pushed through so much physical ailments that you'd be like, that can't be done. And then I definitely think, oh yeah, but for me, I can't do that. But it's that very mindset that would stop me doing it. And he did it. But also, I don't think he's saying everyone should do this. I feel like his journey was highlighting this can be done. This is what's achievable.
Yes.
And there's certain things that he highlights that I think are important to take away with it, like being accountable with yourself and not necessarily giving up at the first sign of discomfort, but also being realistic. I don't know that I do wonder if everyone pushed themselves to the absolute like end of their degree of ability. Let's say I go and train 5 hours a day and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Maybe it would work out, or maybe I just run myself to the ground.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. I think that it worked for him with that sort of lifestyle. And exactly like you said, you take your points from it that are beneficial to you and you can apply it to you. But I do think you got to know thyself. Like for me at this point in time, like doing any form of training like that, I currently have a few different injuries. And I also just don't value that. Like I value a balance in my life and my mental health and having fun.
Yeah.
I value that more right now than I do being so intensely into exercise and fitness. I value fitness, like it's not far behind and it's right up there. But yeah, for me, I think David Goggins is an extreme circumstance. And like you said, you just take those points like, hey, let's say you're doing 20 push-ups a day. It's, you know what, maybe I could up that to 40.
Yeah.
Maybe I could, it's not jumping the gun. And marathons and all that sort of stuff might not be, for a lot of people, that might not be something they value. But yeah, it's very interesting, man. I'm excited to get to the point where he starts talking about how he pushes through the pain, because I haven't reached that just yet.
Yeah, it gets good. And I guess it made sense while listening to the book and where he's come from, that his life was nothing but pain emotionally and through his experience of what the world was delivering to him. So then to make peace with pain, you can see how that was a journey for him. And also quite interesting. I feel like we're all put here with a particular set of challenges to overcome. And I think he says it himself, like he was like, it feels like he's here to unlock the key to human potential. And yeah, you can really see that in terms of like it being a subcategory of discipline and pain and overriding the body and mind's instinct to stop.
Yeah, that resilience.
Yeah,
discipline
exactly.
and resilience. Yeah. I remember hearing some of that, like the mind will quit before your legs will. You know? I think it's so interesting, and I think you make a good point that that's his purpose.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has to find their purpose.
Yeah.
But still have that level of accountability and not fall into using it as an excuse. There's still a level of accountability you have to hold yourself to.
Yeah.
In whatever profession it is you want to do, you have to put in a certain amount of work. But yeah, finding that balance as well for yourself that's right for you is the most important thing. And that depends on what your purpose is and where you're at in life as well. I think your values are going to change at different points and times in your life.
Totally.
But yeah, it's amazing, like to see what he's capable of, and then to go, all right, like it's human potential. You'd have it capped to, in your mind, subconsciously, you're like, that's all I could really do realistically. How far can you push that boundary?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's exciting, man. Even like Wim Hof is another similar, where he's done like the ice bath, and I think he did Mount Everest or one of those, and he did it like with no shoes on.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that's like physically possible.
Yeah, exactly.
He would have to die. And so we're starting to expand at this point in time, and just the timeline of life, we're starting to expand on what the human body's actually like capable.
Absolutely. Because with running, for example, sprinting, like it was believed for years that you couldn't exceed a certain threshold, and no one had gone past it. And then the minute someone broke that threshold, a heap of people did straight afterwards.
Yeah, isn't that so interesting then? If you believe it can be done, and you hear this from all the famous, from Muhammad Ali's or whoever it may be, singers, whatever, all the people that get to that certain level, they had that like almost unwavering belief in them. And like, for instance, like if you were to, these days, let's say you start a sport at 30, right, or 28, most people are going to go, dude, you're way past the point. You know what I mean? Let's be realistic here. And these kind of limiting beliefs where they're going to go, that's never going to happen. But if you think like every century, roughly the age expectancy expands 5 to 10 years. So essentially you could cut 5 to 10 years off your life. If you're supposed to live to 75 and now the expectancy is 85, when you're 45, you're essentially 35. You know what I mean? Not
you're
exactly.
35, you're 28.
Exactly right. If you smoked a lot of weed and it affected your aging process, you're actually 20. I'm actually underage. But and then you add in all the other factors like ice baths, recovery, all the new technology. So it's no longer, when you're 60 or 65, you're not going to be able to walk. No, you can have a hip replacement now, and they can give you like a prosthetic leg that's so efficient and advanced in this day's like technology that you'll be fine walking for another 20 years. So you're probably going to you're going to have a longer life because you can keep moving, keep socializing.
Provided you can afford it.
Provided you can afford it. Yes. Yeah, this is true. This is true. That'll bring us to another topic, another day. Which is saving money.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, even like footballers and that, I'm sure it's going to get to a point where 40 is not a crazy age to still be playing footy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I think the key to what you're saying there is, though, I really believe in the kind of mantra, if it's possible, you can make it probable.
I love that.
And I think the key is though, is how much are you going to dedicate to that? Because let's say you want to get to the peak level of you boxing to fight, and like where that, it's probably better rather than trying to work out, oh, I want to get to like world stage or like wherever it is, to be like, I just want to see how far I can get. So instead of it being an external goal, you're just looking at how far you can push yourself, and wherever that lands in terms of the height of that, let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
But what that's contingent on is how much you're going to invest into that. Because let's say to have that single focus become the highest potential for you, there's going to be some sacrifices that are needed.
That's true.
You know, in terms of where you put your energy.
Yeah.
And focus.
I think it almost has to be obsessive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, if you want to get to the top of anything, whether it's sport, whether it's your profession, whatever, like you have to have some level of like addiction to it.
Yeah.
And obsessive. And you're right, there has to be sacrifice. If you're going out on the weekends, or you're, even if let's say a relationship and you're hanging out there a few days a week, that's a few days a week you're not training. That's and then you add like if you're at an older age, if you've had addictions, all that sort of stuff, that's also going to take some time off. So you have to give yourself a bit of a reality check.
And then on the other side of that, which is the challenging thing, like we said before, like we do want a life of well-being and balance. And when you're a bit older or priorities change and you're like, I do want to catch up with people throughout the week and I do want to do this. And if you don't do that, you feel like you're depriving yourself and you feel like you're not getting a sense of pleasure from life that's depleting. And then you're like, fuck, what am I doing this for?
Yeah.
And so trying to be so dedicated to something when you're not quite there, that's where I think a lot of people get trapped, between myself included, where you're like, I want to be successful in a particular pursuit and I do want to tap into my own potential and greatness. But then I'm also trying to enjoy life in the moment and do it holistically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, it's a tricky one. I think for me, I think the sacrifice now for a few years would be worth it. You know what I mean? Because I've got so many years left where I can enjoy and sit back and relax. But I think I've watched a lot of times, like growing up being a bricklayer and then building trade, I've seen so many people that never stopped. Like they'll be 70 years old, 75 years old, and they're still working so hard and pushing themselves so hard. And it's like, what's the point if you don't enjoy life and relax? So finding that balance and what works for you, like, it's a real interesting point, because I guess in this day and age, there's so much of that hustle grind mentality, and but would you essentially be happy? And this is something I contemplate with, so like genuinely ask this question. Would you be happier with just having a more balanced life where you don't push yourself to the extremes? Let's say you work a standard average job while still working on your passions a little bit here and there on the outside to build them up. Would that be more comfortable life, which essentially would be less stressful?
Well, I guess on one hand, it would be better to do that and enjoy that. If you're focused on, I want to be someone and I want to rise above where I'm at and I want to be exceptional or whatever, but then you're focused on that, but not doing the things to lead there. And then so you never feel like you're getting there, where it could have been better to focus on that balanced and fulfilling life. But the problem that I guess I can feel within myself is when you think about living that life, in some ways it feels like you're settling.
Yeah, living the life, the basic. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And those doubts are going to creep in whenever you're chasing something, because it's going to get difficult. But at least you're giving it a shot. Like aim for the moon, even if you end up at the stars.
Yeah.
At least you gave it that shot. I know. Yeah. I think as well that there is a balance you can find.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's say you go on a holiday once a year. Every year you take 2-3 weeks out. On the weekends, Sunday is your lazy day. You can work as hard as you want 5 days a week. Saturdays you catch up with friends. I think you can find that balance. And if you look at someone like Kevin Hart or Mark Wahlberg, Sylvester Stallone, extremely disciplined with fitness and everything else, but also enjoying life.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like that's their David Goggins.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Are you familiar with the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle? Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, but refresh my memory.
So basically it's the principle that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort.
Okay, I'm
And so-
not fully comprehending.
Okay, so basically you can apply this to a lot of things, but basically, let's say in a example, let's say like I'm trying to not say like writing something, but let's go with that because I can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
Let's say you're like creating like a document and you spend 20 minutes doing it.
Mhm.
And then like it's 80% done. But then to get to 100%, you're going to have to spend 80% longer. So you're going to spend 3 hours polishing it. But you got like most of the results in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So yeah, all right, I'm trying to relate that to like sport. So let's say you go to sport, you learn the technique in 20% of the time.
Yeah, it doesn't translate so
Does
well
it?
there,
Okay.
does it?
I was going to say that's not the best analogy.
We'll move on. We'll move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
come
yeah.
back to that when I can explain it better.
Yeah. Well, I remember the one thing that I remember hearing from a counselor, I think, or a psychologist, they said there's a 10% rule.
Mm.
And what that is, you have to give yourself 10% off or 10% enjoyment, 10% fun. In a week, you want to have 10%, so however many hours. What are we talking there? Roughly like 20 hours or roughly
What?
18 hours in a week of just being off,
Right,
enjoying
right.
your time, whether it's going out with friends or let's say you eat completely you eat healthy. 90% of the time, make sure 10% don't for it to be like sustainable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That it could be your Saturday, a lunch or breakfast, say you go out for a dinner or whatever it might be, lunch Saturday and lunch Sunday. You just allow yourself to take a load off. So
Yeah.
there's got to be a 10% rule, right? At the like minimum. Like I wouldn't go much more than that. Otherwise, you're not going to be really getting the results that you want.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good way to look at it. At least give yourself 10% of flexibility.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I was thinking about that. If you try and do 100%, typically over time, it depletes you where if you're not getting like a level of pleasure from life, 10% at least, like you can start to whittle your energy away. And when we were talking about this dynamic of, let's say you're hyper focused on one thing and sacrificing like catching up with people and you're really moving out these other areas of life so you can hyper focus on one, which can lead in, I think if you're an obsessive or addictive type of person, like you and I have been with drugs, you could do it with something that you're really invested in.
Yeah.
But if that's not giving you enough satisfaction from doing it, you'd probably get better results from being balanced in life with 50% of your focus going to that thing. Your needs are being met through like catching up with people, dating, whatever. And then that energy that you're getting from those other things can be fueled into your obsessive thing.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And I can really resonate with that because I think I'm the type of person that does prefer that balance. With 50% invested in this, which may mean, hey, you're not going to get to maybe a super world stage, something like that, but you're still going to be able to do coaching. You're still going to be able to have a few fights. You're still going to be able to, it can still be your passion.
Yeah.
But it's because, that obsessive level it's never really been for me with anything. I love the balance a lot. I love the socializing. I love the having fun. I love the going and kicking a footy with a mate because I'm not too sore because I've been so obsessively training.
Yeah.
But like, it's still not to say you don't get those gains. You don't still go to the gym a couple times a week and all that sort of stuff, but very different to that obsessive level.
Just going to pause for one sec. Yeah, because that was something I was going to add in that you made a really good point that I guess the amount of focus you can put into your thing at the cost of other things. Like imagine you've got a pie chart, a circle that's 100% of your focus. And normally in life, we split that into a wheel of life type thing where you've got like health, relationships, family, social life, business or work. And then your focus goes into those certain areas. And then if you had, let's say, business as 100% of you or 90% of your focus with 10% for health and 10% for whatever, the level of which you could achieve from that could be quite high. Like that could be very successful. Whereas if business is 50% of your focus, like you said, you might have your own business, like small business and make a decent amount. But yeah, that was just a good insight that you pointed out there. But it depends on what's important for you because you find a lot of people say in business that what's driving them is they're really trying to get ahead, and there's never a point where it's enough. They're like, no, I need to keep going. There's something driving them.
Yeah, yeah. And even like people with making money in that, and they'll be 70 years old, 75 years old, and it's like this almost obsessive point is now you should be enjoying your life. Surely by 65 or something. So for me, I like that balance. But one thing that I was going to just bring up is I think that you don't have to be obsessed. Like you could be obsessed for the period of time until it takes off. So what I mean by that is, let's say in terms of boxing, right? I could be obsessed for 2 years, right? So that I can get in, say, 20 fights, 10 fights a year or something. Like I'm really going at it, I would say 70%, and then 30% my social, blah, 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 which isn't the balance I'd like. I'm putting a fair bit of effort into that, or 70 or 80%, but only for a couple of years.
Yeah.
That way then I can be a coach that's had the amount of experience that I think is going to be necessary to train good fighters and to know what they're going through when they get up to the higher levels and the more elite levels. The same with business. Let's say you go really hard for the first few years and let's get your business established and all that sort of stuff. Then you take a step back. Now it's your brand, but say somebody else might be taking over. But even as I say that, I am thinking I almost never see somebody do that and take the step back. It's never enough.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you have to keep going. In terms of sport, they do because the body can only
Yeah,
hold up so long.
for
But in
sure.
terms of business, there's always something, some new development, some new. Where's
Yeah.
the guys that like? I made a couple movies. I made like 30 million as a
Yeah.
filmmaker. Now I'm sitting on an island and chilling out for the
There
rest of my
definitely
life.
are people that have done that, but yeah, there's few and far between in terms of public examples. But there are people that have sold their business for like huge amounts and then just kick back.
Yeah, that would be my ideal scenario.
Yeah, mine too. No, I think naturally, like I like to say productive, but yeah, it would be good to do that and then have that flexibility for me, if let's say I sold a business for 50 million, for example, and then could do whatever, like, yeah, I'd probably create a life somewhere where like on an island, I'd probably have a few bases where I could move around.
Yeah.
And they'd definitely like set up some motorbike trips and yeah, have a base on an island where I could gym and do whatever. But then also like probably get into a bit of like music creation, a bit of art, like more creative things.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, as you said, that you make some good points that if it's like something you're passionate about, because I'm the same, like I always like to be striving towards something.
Yeah.
But if it's something you're passionate about, you're not really working. Like
Yeah, totally.
It's fun. Like for instance, Joe Rogan, I don't think he would find it such a daunting, hard day to go and do a podcast with someone really famous that he idolizes or he's really wanted to speak to. Like that would just be interesting. Or if, for instance, this podcast I do, I don't see this as a real difficult task. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
look forward
totally.
to doing a podcast with you.
I guess that's a good point. You've got two sides of an activity. You've got effort and energizing.
Yeah.
And if you can do something that energizes you, you're going to keep doing it and you're going to be able to get enough frequency and consistency that it becomes successful.
That's true. That's true, man. And yeah, you're going to get the frequency because they're energized, because you've got that passion about it. It keeps you wanting.
You want to keep doing it.
You want to keep doing it. If it's something like the building trade for me wasn't something I could get passionate about.
It drained you.
It did, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That's true, man. That's true. Interesting. Yeah, I guess that's the goal, isn't it? Find something that you're passionate about, and you're going to have to work. You're going to have to work to get anywhere and put in the work. But if you're passionate about the work, is not going to seem so daunting or not going to seem like such an effort. It's going to be actually energizing while you're doing it, because you're going to go, oh my God, like I'm helping these people or whatever it is you're passionate about. I'm making this. Look at me now. Like I've gone from that size business to this size 12 months. Yeah, I suppose finding something you're passionate about, which is like a very new concept. Like the older generation was just like, just work, make your money,
get your house, and you're on your path. There's something that I just wanted to backtrack for a second, point out. And I guess there's two different ways of looking at this. So there's one, like you've got your own unique journey that positions you to be able to help people in a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's definitely a path that both I and you are on. But then there's also thinking of that wheel of life again in the various areas of life. I wonder if there's like a certain ratio that each of us have where for one person, business is 100% of their focus. For another person, it's balanced. For another person, it's 50% health and it's 20% business and it's 10% whatever else. And that kind of, I wonder if those things based on your upbringing and whatever else are like set where, let's say you and I are like trying to consciously go, oh, I want to put 100% focus into fitness or business, but then you're neglecting the things that are giving you the fulfillment and energy, the enrichment for life. So you keep trying to get to this thing because you've mentally kind of focused on it and you're like, I want to achieve this. So you're putting 100% of your focus into something that you should be putting 50% of your focus into. You haven't yet found that sweet spot where you can do that sustainably, but then do the other things that give you what you need from life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely think, you make a good point there, an interesting point. And I think it would differentiate with all people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people would really value this, some people really value that, some people value just partying and having fun and don't see any value in making money, or like as long as they can get by, they're happy. So I think it would definitely differentiate, but I think in order to figure that out, it's a matter of trial and error. Like you can't think about what it is. So you've got to
take action and see what fits.
Yeah, like some people at school, they head in sporting direction and they do amazing. They might make it to the AFL or whatever. That's what worked for them. Another person, that would never work for them. Like they head down a direction of books but that's what fulfills them. That's what feels right to them. So I guess it's a matter of trying different things and whatever really you think about a lot and you feel passionate about and it resonates with you is what you go down. And I think there'll be so many factors, your upbringing, what your parents did, what some of your role models did, where your life led you, your body type, even. You're 6'8",
genetics.
You might head towards basketball.
Yeah.
But dabbling in a few different things. Like for me currently, I'm really finding like a passion, like I'm enjoying this podcast. I'm really finding right now exploring different things is good for me. Like I haven't fully, like I really want to do counseling and help people, but I still want to keep the gate open to other explorations. Like one thing I know for sure I'm passionate about is boxing coaching and martial arts. That's something that I love. But in terms of the other areas of life, like I still want to do a little bit of trial and error to work it out. And I suppose you don't want to do too much of that and bounce around.
Oh, I can speak to that, man. I fucking feel like the last 4 years, pretty much, and it's so interesting to think back on this. Like 5 years ago, I went overseas, got myself into a way better state, and I was like, I want to help other people do this 100%. And then as I came back and had this intention to coach people, and I guess like life transformation, I was like, okay, I tried to create content, but I didn't really put it out to the world. So then I was like, okay, I need to learn marketing. And then I spent 3 years like going to life coaching programs, learning marketing and that side of things. But then also it was like, I don't really agree with sell at all costs type tactics. I was like, that's just not who I am. And I know that to some degree in business, you need to apply some of those principles, but I felt the disingenuous kind of approach where, I don't know if you've had like people hit you up in DMs and they're like, hey, just wondering, do you need help with this? Like I'm running a program. And you're like, fuck off.
Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah. Because you can feel the inner authenticity.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You feel it's inauthentic and it's some form of it's just not, inauthentic.
It's a subtle form of manipulation,
it
really.
Is. Yeah, it's manipulation. And that's what businesses work off, man.
Yeah.
Manipulation. Like, I'm going to sell you this and I'm going to help you do this, which is something you could learn in a book or whatever in, a week or two of reading yourself.
Framed it in a way that makes it seem like it's got value. Yeah. And look, I'm not against that, but the difference should be you can go have a look at this in a book, but if you don't have the self-autonomy and discipline to do it, I can do it with you and you can have accountability and actually say the things, but instead of trying to emotionally, because what I've learned through this process is, say with selling, there's an emotional aspect where, so what have you been working on? Okay, yeah, I've been trying to get fit. And what have you tried? Yeah, I've done this. Okay, so where do you think that path's going? Yeah, well, if I keep going, I'm going to end up overweight and like unhealthy. And how would you feel about that? And so it's really highlighting this sense of pain and like what you don't want.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how would you feel if you could get to in your perfect body and feeling great in 3 months. You're like, yeah, I'd love it. Well, my program does that. And now, hey, if that can be delivered upon and you live up to what you're saying, maybe there's some area, and health's a better example with that. But then the problem becomes, say, in business, oh, we can get you to 15K a month, or promises that aren't delivered on.
Yeah, definitely. And prices that are so ramped up.
Yeah.
That it's quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
For the same service, you get the same service in some other way or some other form for a lot cheaper price. And I'm not saying that all of these are there, but I think we're specifically talking about those ones that do work on that manipulation tactic. And it's like I noticed it with so many businesses. If there's anything that like you're owed money for, let's say, they have this wonderful way of not seeing that evidence. Like I had a previous job where I didn't get paid correctly. And they're like, oh, we didn't recognize that it wasn't paid correctly. We hadn't looked over these things. And all these different ways of avoiding what they did wrong, as opposed to being like, hey, we made this mistake. And I find so many businesses do that. Like it's a manipulation, but they're also, if they don't deliver on the promise, it's like they're never at fault. There's never this admittance of, oh, I made the mistake. It's, oh, no, actually, it's because you should have bought this program with this program.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and look, I'm the type of person, I couldn't be like that. Like, I couldn't be a car salesman, or I couldn't be, like, I'm just not that type of person that can knowingly rip people off or knowingly be doing something that's deceitful.
Yeah.
But selling it in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do that to people.
This
man.
house is cramped. Cozy.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like, so you see in those movies like they sell a house, it was built on a graveyard.
Yeah.
Mention
Exactly.
that part. I don't know. I couldn't do that, man. Like my service has to be with like pure intention. You know? And I'm not saying that doesn't come at a cost.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It might, you know,
Yeah.
like you might still have personal training costs, but I'm not gonna exploit people.
Yeah.
Let's say I get t-shirts made up for $1. I'm not gonna charge you like $68 a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, it might be like $20 or something because of the time, the effort, but it will add up to a decent and reasonable price. Right?
FYI, t-shirts are more than $1. But
yeah, that would be
just to align your expectations.
Okay, yeah. I'm in trouble.
$60.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I agree. And I suppose that's a positive though, because I think the people that do the best and businesses that do the best have realized that when you're genuine and when you're authentic, word of mouth alone is going to get you a lot of business.
It does seem that people who go heavy on the sales and marketing, hard sell tactics do well in business. There's no denying that. But you know what I think the difference is? The people that have that more balanced approach, they may not ultimately have the same revenue, but I feel like they get a deeper fulfillment from the business because one, the people that they're selling to are aligned with them. So they're like a better connection. If you're selling to anyone, then there's going to be people that aren't in the, say, if you do a coaching program, oh yeah, you totally need to be in it just because you want your bottom line to be higher. You're going to bring people in that may not be the best fit, and then they're going to be unsatisfied. And then that's going to create just a bit of disharmony with you.
Yeah, disturbance. Like, I think that's what I was going to say previously is a lot of businesses are narcissistic.
Oh yeah.
It's about them and what they can get, but they sell it to you as if they're saving you, they're helping you, and you're like, oh my God, this is too good to be true.
Yeah,
and it is.
Yeah.
It is too good to be true because it's about them. It's about what they can get off you, and you can tell when someone's genuine. You can tell when somebody actually, and it can be really hard to decipher. They're really good. But I think you get that feeling and that energy when someone's a genuine, decent person. Right? And those are the people I personally gravitate towards in whatever business venture I'm going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the narcissists are able to get it over on that 50% of the population that haven't had dealings with them yet.
Yeah.
You know, the people that are oblivious to it.
They go for the vulnerable, man.
Yeah.
They go for the vulnerable and the people that, unfortunately, the people that are trustworthy and a bit naive. That's what they prey on.
And the thing is, I like to think of everyone's on a spectrum of self-focused to other-focused. And more now than ever, we've got more people on that self-focused side of the spectrum, which tends to lean towards narcissistic kind of attitudes and the problem is in business, it's the people that are out for themselves that tend to get ahead.
It's true. Yeah. The narcissists are the CEOs a lot of the time and the ones that are doing so well in life.
Because
But
they're willing to step over others.
yeah, and there's no remorse. It's relentless. I mean, it doesn't matter what's in their way, kind of thing. Like they'll find a way.
Yeah.
Which is people with empathy are like, oh, but that could hurt that person.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah,
So-
yeah.
But I still believe, like overall, like even on a spiritual level, like if you're doing the right thing, good things will come to you. If you have ill intentions, you know, even if for me, if I have ill intentions, I can't continue doing it.
No.
Whether it's in a relationship, whether it's whatever it may be, I can't rip people off. I can't like stuff you around a million times or use you for lifts and this and borrowing money off you. It doesn't sit well within me.
Yep.
So it's not a path I can go down. But I still think there's so much room for potential, and there's so much room to be successful still if you're on that path of being a decent person and a good person.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what collectively we're working out, because in some of the coaching programs I've done, there's been like, say one that I went into and it was like 80 people there, and there was like one other person that I happened to speak with, and he was like, this isn't vibing. But it really made me realize how there's the path of service to others. And I think this is what the empaths are on more than anything, where there's this deep desire to help others.
Yeah.
And then there's the path of selling to others.
Yeah, like self-fulfilling, like self.
Yeah. Came up with a really good name for it, and now it's completely blanking on me.
It's the way.
Oh, fuck yeah.
But I know exactly what you mean, that selfish path where it's all about them and it's not, the consumer is just another number.
Yeah, the business of transformation, I think, is what I came up with. So like you've got the path of service to others, and then you've got like the business of transformation. So let's say Tony Robbins is probably the business of transformation. He still does help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And he makes a lot of fucking money from it though.
Yeah.
But then there's like this path of service to others where it's like you would literally do it for free because it's your path. Like your life has created the circumstances where you can help people so well. And that's the challenge, I think, for empaths, to learn how to charge for that in a way that's still aligned with both them and the client.
Yeah, that's the exact thing I was just going to say as you were saying that. It's finding that balance where it's okay for me to charge a certain amount of money for my service. That's not something I should feel guilty about or should feel. That's not selfish. That's not that being able to provide for a future family or myself. And that's a normal part of life. But then, there's that balance. There's that balance where I think I'm always going to be the type of person that wants to help people if they're struggling in that. But it is something to focus on and to, what's the word? Now I'm losing words. I've caught it. But you just got to observe your behavior and be like, all right, reality check yourself. Am I outputting too much and not receiving anything back for it or what I deserve back for it?
Yeah, exactly.
And not feeling guilty about that. That's something that I struggle with. I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm completely mentally drained, but I'm going to go and help this person. It's like, it's okay for me to be mentally drained and not answer that message or not. That's not an evil person.
Yeah.
That's just you prioritizing your own mental health, and which your financial wealth is in line with your mental health, your physical health, and you need finance to survive.
Absolutely. I find it's really tricky when you come from an environment of working so hard for your money. Your parents did as well. There's no like entrepreneurial influence in your upbringing. And I say for my mum, I don't know that she ever earned more than 50,000 a year. And that's been where my wealth consciousness has been capped at. And it's crazy actually. Like I worked in the mines and stuff like on and off, but I did it like in intervals. So I'd have 6 months on, 6 months off or thereabouts. And like for 3 years in a row, it was like 60 odd thousand a year that I was making like within
6 months.
and I was starting and stopping at random times. So it was like for 3 years, even though I had completely random schedules and different jobs, I still was capped at 61K a year. And I was like, wow, that's fucking interesting.
It is, yeah.
Because it was almost like once I got to a certain point, like energetically, I was like, all right, and I've had enough. I need to stop. Yeah. And then it just so happened that it was like within a $1,000 tolerance that I'm like, fuck, there's some mindset shit happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the positive thing is that you can change any of that. Even if you're programmed to that, like me, for instance, with spending money, not being great with money, as we talked about on previous podcast, all of that are behaviors you can change. You know what I mean? You can practice, implement new things, and you can change that. I suppose it's how much effort you put into it and what you value.
Absolutely. All right. I think that will do it for this podcast.
Sounds good, man.
Sweet,
Sounds good. Always a pleasure, brother. Thanks, man.